Thank you for joining us today for excerpts from Sunday worship. While we have resumed traditional Sunday morning worship, we understand that many of you are not ready or able to return to regular activities. Have you tried our hybrid services? You can join us live Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. wherever you are. Ask Jen Halsey or Joyce for the access link to Sunday morning Zoom and join us in worship. Easter is a time of rebirth and renewal. Around us we see flowers blooming, and we are reminded that the seed that was planted has survived the winter. Raise your hands to the heavens and rejoice. This is the day that the Lord has made. Lastly, please remember that the work of the church continues even when you cannot be with us. We need your prayers, your participation, and your financial support. Checks may be mailed to P.O. Box 1871, Demarest, Georgia, 30535. We hope that you will find these weekly videos posted on both YouTube and Facebook a way to stay in fellowship with us. Once again, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to the day when we will all be able to worship and fellowship together.
Here we will take the wine and the water. Here we will take the bread of new birth. Here you shall call your sons and your daughters. Call us anew to be salt for the earth. Give us to drink the wine of compassion. Give us to eat the bread that is you. Nourish us well and teach us to fashion lives that are holy and hearts that are true. This is often called, every year, it is basically the same. The fourth Sunday after Easter is Good Shepherd Sunday. And all of our readings have to do with the 23rd Psalm and the shepherding passages. When Christ calls himself the Good Shepherd. And years ago, back in the day when people did things like this, we had there was a contest, I guess you could say, or a competition, or whatever you might call it, in our school. And we were given Bible verses to memorize. I think I memorized almost the whole Gospel of John, because there are passages from John that to this day I can quote from King James Version without even looking. That's why I use different translations now so that I don't just quote verbatim from memory. But I think it's something that is good for us to realize that even though each year we have the same readings, there's meaning behind those readings, and we learn something new each time. Often maybe because what we read is informed by what's happening around us. If we really listen to what's happening in the world around us, we find that often our take on what we read last year, or even last week, is different. So today, our reading is from the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verses 11 through 18. Hear the word of the Lord. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd who owns the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down and authority to take it up again. The command I received from my Father. God bless the reading of God's words. Yeah, it really is better if I start printing those things out so they're great big. It's hard to read those little big print things anymore. It does matter who you listen to and whose voice you hear. We know that Jesus said that it was important because whoever's just hired to do something doesn't necessarily care for the life of a child or whatever as much as we do. Now, certainly we are not familiar with shepherds. Let's get that straight. Now, when Jesus was speaking to the people, they knew a lot about shepherds. That was part of the whole scenery. Their whole background was agrarian. They understood what would happen if you sowed wheat and tares together. They understood all of those sayings. But we don't understand shepherding so much. And we have, of course, this sweet image of Jesus walking along with the snowy white lamb on his shoulders, and Jesus is clean and wearing the white robes, and everything is so sweet and pristine. Debbie Thomas, who writes Journey with Jesus, said her only relationship with that was growing up in India, and her grandfather had a farm where he raised sheep. And she said, let me tell you, they were not snowy white. And after a day of my grandfather working among the sheep, he didn't smell good either. And so she said, we have this image that is one thing, but it's not the reality. That when Jesus talked about the sheep weren't particularly nice. They'd even bite. That sheep weren't the smartest creatures in the world. They would wander off. And they did anything and everything, and they didn't seem to learn from experience. So just think about it. If Jesus says he's the good shepherd, and we're like sheep, I guess that means that Jesus and God kind of expect us to not necessarily be perfect, to not listen all the time, not to listen well, and to not always do as we should do. Jesus still comes looking for us, still loves us, still prods us back into the pen when we run away again. And that is, I think, the voice we listen for, or I hope it's the voice we listen for. I'm going to bring back a topic that is not very comfortable for us. It matters whose voice you listen for. We all know what happened on January the 6th. It's a horrible time in our nation's history when we watched rioters storm the Capitol building, where the people of Congress were going about the business of the Constitution, ratifying the electoral votes. And we know that these people swarmed in and they attacked the Capitol Police. And they were going through there shouting and looking for specific people. And they had nooses ready, supposedly to hang those people if they caught them. It was a dark day. And when it was over, and some of them were captured, they said, but the president called us here. Now, whether he did or didn't, it's up to whoever's interpretation. But their response was, this is what they heard. They heard him calling to them to go and do this, that he was going to walk with them to the Capitol. He was going to march with them to be sure that things went the way they should, to stop what was happening. And they said, some of them even said, I shouldn't be blamed for this. I was just doing what my president called me to do. Now, again, whose voice was he hearing? To how many people who are calling themselves Christians can't hear put on a mask. They have an argument for it. They politicize it, or they say it's against my freedom to have to do that. There are arguments for all of these things because of the voice to which they are listening. Does the hired person care about the life of others? You would hope they would. We know that there are stories of teachers at Sandy Hook who laid their lives down to protect children during the shooting. We know that there have been people who loved. Their love was deep and compassionate, and they took seriously their calling to take care of the children, or to take care of a congregation, or to do what they were supposed to do. But we also know that in many places, there are people who are only in things for themselves. They only listen and hear what they want to hear because it suits them. There is no compassion. There is no concern. And it doesn't matter what you do as long as you get the result you want. It doesn't matter how you go about it. And let's face it, it's not real easy to hear God's voice. Because when we listen for God, we're listening through filters. We're listening through the filters of our traditions. We're listening through the filters of our culture. I can tell you that I can hear in the back of my mind preachers that we had in our churches when I was growing up. And sometimes the words they're saying and what I'm reading don't go together. And I start to wonder, which one? So finally, I realized that the voice of God is not going to call us to hate. The voice of God is not going to call us to separate someone out and harm them. The voice of God is not going to call us to seek our own way. The voice of God is going to call us to take care of the weak, to take care of one another. The voice of God calls us to listen and to be caring and compassionate, because God is compassionate. Now, you've read this. What made those people so angry years ago when they heard the voice of Jesus? When Jesus called himself the Good Shepherd, do you have any idea why the religious leaders became so angry about that? It was that the one who is considered the Good Shepherd, the shepherd, is God. And when Jesus called himself the Good Shepherd, they heard him equating himself with God. And then he said, I and the Father am one. Heresy. And it has been heresy throughout history when people listen for the voice of God and it doesn't quite line up with what leaders think. If you think in terms of science, how many people were burned at the stake or stoned because they took, or excommunicated because they took a particular view of the world that didn't line up with what the church said? The earth is flat. No, the earth isn't flat, it's round. Well, the church says it's flat, therefore it's flat. By the same token, the sun revolves around the earth. The earth is the center of the universe. No, The Earth is part of several planets, and they all revolve around the sun. And there are many universes. The church says. So for many generations, people who were people of science were destroyed and put down and excommunicated because they dared to stand up and say, no, this is not right. Too often, we don't want to listen to anything that's uncomfortable. We don't want to listen to anyone who challenges our belief. We don't want to listen because it's not comfortable. Again, whose voice are we listening to? What voice? God is the ultimate shepherd. Jesus said, there are people of my flock that aren't right here in front of me. My flock is bigger than this. Jesus said, everyone is going to be gathered in to one fold. Everyone. So, do we listen to God? Do we listen for God? Or do we listen for those who tell us what we want to hear? Do we listen to those who tell us how to line our pockets, how to become more powerful, how to stand the way we are, how to be just like them, with promises of riches and promises of wealth, when God promises us the ultimate, when God promises us absolute life, amazing love, and a chance to live in relationship to one another. Here's a cartoon that goes around on Facebook from time to time. It shows a sheep sitting there, headphones on. And basically, I haven't heard from the master lately. And Jesus is back behind him yelling. But he can't hear Jesus because he's got his headphones on. And he's listening to everything but. Have we become so busy in this world? Has the world gotten so loud that we no longer hear the voice of God? Do we even listen for the voice of God? You see, God is still speaking. God is still speaking. The only question is, are we listening? Are we listening? Amen. Our closing hymn this morning is still our unison verse, and I promise you we're going to change eventually. Our unison verse today is number 4 of Gather Us In. And let us read, let us stand together and read. Not in the dark of buildings confining, not in some heaven light years away. Here in this place, the new light is shining. Now is the kingdom, now is the day. Gather us in and hold us forever. Gather us in and make us your own. Gather us in, all peoples together. Fire of love in our flesh and our bones. Go out this week. Carry with you the love of God. Be careful whose voice you're listening for. If it sounds too much like anger and prejudice and hate, then you might want to recalibrate. Go out in love, go out in light, and be light in the dark world. Amen.
Thank you for joining us today for excerpts from Sunday worship. While we have resumed traditional Sunday morning worship, We understand that many of you are not ready or able to return to regular activities. Have you tried our hybrid services? You can join us live Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. wherever you are. Ask Jen Halsey or Joyce for the access link to Sunday morning Zoom and join us in worship. Easter is a time of rebirth and renewal. Around us we see flowers blooming, and we are reminded that the seed that was planted has survived the winter. Raise your hands to the heavens and rejoice. This is the day that the Lord has made. Lastly, please remember that the work of the church continues even when you cannot be with us. We need your prayers, your participation, and your financial support. Checks may be mailed to P.O. Box 1871, Demarest, Georgia 30535. We hope that you will find these weekly videos posted on both YouTube and Facebook a way to stay in fellowship with us. Once again, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to the day when we will all be able to worship and fellowship together.